This morning, John Bercow, the former House of Commons Speaker, has defected to the Labour Party. A Conservative since his youth, he served as a Conservative MP from 1997 until 2009, before occupying the Speaker's chair for a decade. Government sources have told Sky News they're not surprised by the defection, after bitter rows over Brexit made him many enemies in his former party. Well, for his first TV interview about the decision, I'm joined here in the studio by John Bercow.
Trevor, good morning to you.
Good morning. 25 years, it's a long time. Why leave now, after all that time?
Well, I was a member of the Conservative Party for 29 years, but Robert Buckland spoke truer than he knew when he said that I left the Conservative Party a long time ago. Let's be crystal clear, explicit and accurate, Trevor. I became Speaker on the 22nd of June 2009, and that evening, in conformity with convention, I wrote to the then chairman of the Conservative Party, Eric Pickles, to tender my resignation as a member of the Conservative Party. Why? Because the Speaker does not belong to, is independent of, separate from, unconnected with, expressing no support for or opposition to any political party.
That's a different decision. You could have rejoined when you stepped down as Speaker 18 months ago. Why didn't you?
I could have rejoined the Conservative Party. I didn't have the slightest desire to do so, and I want to be fundamentally clear and for there to be no dubiety about this. As I said yesterday to an Observer journalist, my values are left of centre. I do not identify with the Conservative Party. And I think that in British politics, you've just heard from Ed Davey, most people still see it as principally a choice between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party. And the Labour Party is the alternative government to the Conservative Party. If you believe, as I do, that this government is bad news, unfit to govern, and that the Prime Minister, though a successful campaigner, is a lousy governor, you have to ask yourself, do you want rid of it? And if you want rid of it, you have then to pose to yourself the question and to answer it, how is that to be achieved? And the reality of the matter is that in the United Kingdom, the only credible vehicle for the removal of this government is the election of a Labour government committed to equality, social justice, internationalism and a fairer and more inclusive society. That's the Labour brand.
I know you're a person who chooses your words very carefully, John. You used the expression "this government," I think 3 or 4 times this morning. At what point did you decide you couldn't be a Conservative? Was it when the Conservative Party was taken over by Boris Johnson, or was it something that changed in you?
No, it was something that changed in me. And I think...
Oh, so it's not Boris Johnson?
I owe it to myself and to you and to everybody else to be on the record about it and for there to be no uncertainty. So if you're saying to me, is it principally about Boris Johnson, the honest answer to that is no. And in fact, there has been, I think, already some confusion and misrepresentation of that point. It's not personal against Boris Johnson. I do think that he is someone who has only a nodding acquaintance with the truth in a leap year, and I think that the utter contempt with which he has treated Parliament is lamentable, and I think it has exacerbated the very strong feelings of resentment towards him, because I think a lot of people feel that's not the way to behave. Telling the truth in and to Parliament matters, circumventing Parliament is wrong, treating Parliament with disdain is objectionable. But no, I have over a long period evolved my political thinking. I wasn't a member of a party throughout my tenure as Speaker, because it would have been quite wrong to be. I didn't take a view. I sought to facilitate the House of Commons to express its view and all individual members to put their points across, because that's the responsibility of the Speaker. Now I'm a private citizen, as Robert Buckland says. I'm entitled to take a political view, and my view is a left-of-centre view. I identify with Labour values, Labour principles, Labour policies.
I'm going to come to Labour in a second, but you've used the words xenophobic, nationalistic. You have just said some, let's say, less than fond things about Boris Johnson. It's the party you don't like, isn't it? And you don't like Conservatives anymore.
Well, I don't dislike individual Conservatives. I have still a number of Conservative friends, and I can admire and respect very much, Trevor, people across the political spectrum with a vast miscellany of different views on the understanding that they're honest and principled and standing up for the principles in which they believe. So it's not a question of personalities, it's a question of the issues. But if you say, do I like the Conservative Party? The answer is no. And I'm absolutely clear that I am not, these days, a Conservative. So it's not about Boris Johnson. As Tony Benn used to say, it's not about personalities, it's about policies.
All right. You know what they're saying, aren't they? Boris Johnson didn't give you a peerage, and Keir Starmer will.
No.
Clear that up.
Well, I can answer that very simply. I've had absolutely no discussion whatsoever, either with Keir Starmer or any other member of the Labour leadership about that matter. There has been no barter, no trade, no deal whatsoever. And if I may very politely say so, and I do, the people who make what they think is that potent and coruscating criticism of me are operating according to their own rather low standards. Let's deal with the issue rather than impugn people's motives. It's got nothing to do with that whatsoever.
Right. Before we leave that, Leader of the Opposition conceivably might be watching this programme. It might be occurring to him right now, I must bring up John and offer him a peerage. If he were to do that, what would you say?
Well, I think there's a lot to be said, Trevor, for the old Willie Whitelaw adage. Personally, I think it is best to cross bridges only when one comes to them. It isn't in my mind. It's not part of the game plan. I haven't discussed it. I'm not waiting for it. What I'm motivated by is a commitment to equality, social justice and internationalism, and I believe absolutely passionately. And these are the issues that, on levelling up, the government mouths the mantra, but it doesn't know the meaning of the mantra. If you look at the recent record, the government's own education czar said £15,000 million is needed to level up, and the government has offered less than 1/10 of that. Let's focus on the issues. Slashing the aid budget, it's wrong. It's objectionable. It's utterly shameful.
We talk about these things a lot on this programme, but, you know, we have the excitement of having you here this morning. So let's talk about you.
With pleasure.
It could be said that this is a typical Bercow grand gesture to avoid speculation as part of your legacy of the criticism of you as presiding over a culture of bullying in the Houses of Parliament. How do you respond to that? That this is not really what you're about. What you're really trying to do is to bury all of that.
I'm not trying to bury anything. I think the suggestion that I presided over that culture is quite wrong. I'm not going to talk about individual instances because there is a confidentiality about that process which shouldn't be compromised or disrespected in any way. I can just say, however, there was one individual who brought a complaint of bullying against me. It was investigated and it was rejected. But I put to you again, Trevor, and I appreciate you've got your journalistic responsibility. Let's focus on the issues. As far as I'm concerned, the issues are what caused me to make the decision I've made.
Last point. Speak honestly to me.
I always do.
Can you say that you never did anything that you felt now you regret, or you thought might have been objectionable, or that might have been something that, when you look back now, you think, I wish I hadn't done that?
Oh, good heavens.
In relation to this issue of bullying and so on.
Gosh, I would have to cast my mind back. We all make mistakes. Have I been perfect in every instance? Can I say that, with the benefit of hindsight, I'd never have done something differently? Of course I couldn't. But I come back to the central proposition. One has, as a private citizen, the right to make a judgment about which political parties to support. I believe, in terms of values, the Labour Party is preferable to the Conservative Party. And as far as Keir Starmer is concerned, I don't know whether he's going to make it politically or not. But I think he's an honest, decent, intelligent person who has come into politics as the continuation of public service. And the real issue, in my mind, is who has the vision of a more equitable society? Who thirsts to deliver social mobility? Who wants to better the lot of people less fortunate than a political leader? On that calculus, Keir Starmer is vastly preferable to Boris Johnson.
You've talked about Labour's values and policies. I have to confess, I've been doing this programme for some weeks now. I've yet to drag anything that looked like a policy out of a Labour spokesperson. What is a policy or value that you think Labour has that really offers this vision?
I'll give you two examples, one domestic and one international. A domestic commitment to levelling up and the proper funding of education so that those who have been dramatically damaged as a consequence of the pandemic have the chance to recover. That's the first example. And the second example, which speaks to the DNA of a progressive party, is that the Labour Party thinks it is utterly wrong and immoral to slash the aid budget, cutting provision for the poorest and most destitute people on the face of the planet who don't live on $1 a day. They exist on $1 a day. That is wrong. Period.
I'm afraid I have to ask pretty much everybody who has experienced government and been seen in the Conservative Party this today. Matt Hancock, completely useless or what?
Well, I think it would be fair for me to say that I would buy Matt at my valuation and sell him at his and realise a healthy profit in the process.
I think I've worked out exactly what that means. Well, we'll see how Hancock's fare. Thank you very much, John Bercow.
Trevor, thank you very much indeed. Good morning to you.
Morning.